A single shot rang out across the dusty plains of Colorado Territory, 1876, drawing the attention of every soul in the small mining town of Silver Gulch, including Cordelia Zimmerman, who stood frozen behind the counter of her father's general store, her honey-colored hair escaping from its pins as she locked eyes with the stranger who had just dismounted his horse outside. She knew trouble when she saw it, but something about the tall cowboy with the storm-gray eyes made her heart quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Quinn Galloway had not planned to stop in Silver Gulch. His destination lay another 50 miles west, where cattle grazing land awaited him a fresh start after 3 years of driving herds from Texas. But fate had other plans when his horse threw a shoe just outside town. Now, as he stepped into the mercantile seeking supplies, he found himself unable to look away from the shopkeeper's daughter, her delicate features a startling contrast to the rough-hewn world around them. "Something I can help you with, mister?" Cordelia asked, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. Quinn removed his hat, revealing dark hair streaked with sun. "Just passing through, madam. Need some provisions and a blacksmith for my horse." "Blacksmith's at the end of the street," she replied, gesturing with a slender hand. "As for provisions, you've come to the right place." Her father, Edwin Zimmerman, emerged from the storeroom, his thick German accent evident as he greeted the newcomer. Quinn noticed how his welcoming smile faded slightly when he saw his daughter's flushed cheeks. "I'll help this gentleman, Cordelia," Edwin said firmly. "You should check our inventory in the back." "Yes, father." She ducked her head obediently, but not before casting one more glance at Quinn. That evening, as Quinn sat on the porch of the town's only hotel, he spotted Cordelia walking alone toward the church at the edge of town. Without conscious thought, he found himself following, maintaining a respectful distance. When she turned and spotted him, he expected fear or indignation. Instead, she waited. "Mr. Galloway, is it?" she asked as he approached. "Are you following me?" "Seems I am," he admitted with unexpected honesty, "though I can't rightly explain why." "People talk in Silver Gulch," she warned, though she made no move to leave, "especially about unmarried women who speak with strange cowboys." "Let them talk," Quinn replied, falling into step beside her. "I'll be gone tomorrow anyway." But he wasn't. The blacksmith discovered cracks in his horse's hooves that needed time to heal, and Quinn found himself extending his stay. Each evening, as if guided by an invisible thread, he and Cordelia found reasons to cross paths, brief conversations behind the mercantile, accidental meetings at the town well, moments stolen like precious gems from the watchful eyes of Silver Gulch. On the third evening, as the setting sun painted the mountains gold, Quinn found Cordelia sitting alone on a bench behind the church. "Your father doesn't approve of me," Quinn observed, settling beside her but maintaining a proper distance. "My father doesn't approve of any man who looks at me," she replied with a small smile. "He has plans for me to marry Heinrich Muller when he returns from Denver next month. Heinrich's father owns the silver mine." Quinn felt an unexpected pang at her words. "And is that what you want, Miss Zimmerman?" "Cordelia," she corrected softly. "And no, but daughters don't always get what they want in this world." "Maybe they should," Quinn said, his voice low. "Maybe we all deserve a chance at something real." Their eyes met, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them, something that felt dangerously like possibility. The following day, Silver Gulch buzzed with the news of a stage robbery 10 miles east. Quinn volunteered to join the posse, partly out of a sense of duty and partly to prove himself to the suspicious townspeople. Edwin Zimmerman watched with narrowed eyes as Quinn mounted a borrowed horse, his daughter's gaze following the cowboy a bit too intently for his comfort. When the posse returned 2 days later, Quinn was supporting the wounded sheriff, having tracked the bandits to their hideout and helped recover the stolen goods. The town's perception of him shifted, no longer a drifting stranger but a man of character. Everyone except Edwin Zimmerman welcomed him with newfound respect. That night, as Cordelia closed the store, Quinn appeared in the doorway. "You're hurt," she said immediately, noticing the crude bandage on his arm. "It's nothing," he assured her. "Bullet just grazed me." Without a word, she locked the front door and led him to the back room, where she kept medical supplies. Her fingers were gentle as she cleaned and dressed his wound properly. "Why are you still here, Mr. Galloway?" she asked softly. "Your horse has been ready to travel since yesterday." Quinn's eyes met hers. "I think you know why, Cordelia." Her hands stilled on his arm. "It's impossible," she whispered. "My father has already promised me to Heinrich. The arrangements are made." "I don't believe in impossible," Quinn said, carefully taking her hand in his. "Just difficult." Their first kiss was tentative, questioning, both aware of the line they were crossing. The second was not. For 2 weeks, they lived in a world of stolen moments and whispered promises. Quinn took odd jobs around town, proving himself hardworking and honest. Some folks began to wonder aloud why Edwin Zimmerman couldn't see what a fine match the cowboy would make for his daughter. Others, loyal to the Mahler family's interests, reminded them that promises had been made, arrangements settled. Cordelia blossomed under Quinn's attention, finding courage she hadn't known she possessed. She began to voice opinions in the store, suggesting improvements that increased their business. Edwin watched this transformation with growing concern, correctly guessing its source. The confrontation came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when Edwin caught Quinn helping Cordelia unload supplies behind the store, their laughter carrying through the damp air. "You will stay away from my daughter," Edwin demanded, his accent thickening with anger. "She is promised to another." "With respect, sir," Quinn replied evenly. "That should be her choice." "Father, please," Cordelia began, but Edwin raised his hand. "You know nothing of our ways, cowboy. Nothing of the promises made between families. Heinrich will provide for her, give her status in this community." "And if that's not what I want?" Cordelia asked, her voice stronger than she felt. Edwin's face darkened. "Then you dishonor your family and everything I have built for us here." That night, as rain pounded on the roof of the hotel, Quinn sat alone, wrestling with his conscience. He had never intended to disrupt Cordelia's life or come between her and her family. Perhaps the honorable thing would be to ride out at dawn, spare her the difficult choice. A soft knock at his door shattered this resolve. Cordelia stood in the hallway, soaked from the rain, her eyes wide and determined. "I won't let them decide my future," she said simply. Quinn pulled her inside, wrapped her in a blanket, and listened as she explained how her father had locked her in her room, declaring that Heinrich was returning early to formalize their engagement. "I climbed out the window," she admitted, a hint of pride in her voice. "I never thought I could do something like that." "What are you asking of me, Cordelia?" Quinn asked carefully. "Take me with you," she replied without hesitation. "Wherever you're going. I want to choose my own path." They left before dawn, taking only what they could carry. Quinn left payment for his room and a note expressing his regrets for any pain caused. They rode west, toward the land Quinn had purchased sight unseen, both exhilarated and terrified by their choices. 3 days later, they arrived at a small settlement near Quinn's property. The local preacher, a kindly man named Reverend Phillips, agreed to marry them that same day despite the unusual circumstances. Cordelia wore a simple blue dress purchased at the general store, Quinn in the cleanest clothes he possessed. The witnesses were strangers who would become their first friends in their new home. "Are you certain?" Quinn asked her one last time before they spoke their vows. "This life won't be easy." Cordelia's smile was radiant. I've never been more certain of anything. Their first weeks on Quinn's land were harder than either had imagined. The cabin needed extensive repairs before winter. The soil was rocky and difficult to cultivate, and their nearest neighbors were miles away. Cordelia's hands, once soft from life in town, grew calloused and strong. Quinn worked from sunrise to sunset, determined to build something worthy of her sacrifice. 1 month after their departure, a rider appeared on their property. Quinn reached for his rifle, but Cordelia recognized the visitor first, Heinrich Muller himself, looking out of place in his fine city clothes. "Your father sent me to bring you home," Heinrich announced without preamble when they met him at the property line. "This is my home now," Cordelia replied, standing shoulder to shoulder with Quinn. Heinrich's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand. There are contracts, agreements between our families. Your father's business depends on my father's goodwill. I'm sorry if my choices have caused difficulties," Cordelia said, genuinely regretful for the position her father might be in. "But I won't return." "Is he forcing you to say this?" Heinrich demanded, gesturing toward Quinn. Quinn remained silent, letting Cordelia speak for herself, something Heinrich clearly found unsettling. "No one forces me to do anything anymore," she answered firmly. "Please tell my father I'm safe and happy. That's all he needs to know." Heinrich left without another word, but the couple knew this wouldn't be the end of it. 2 weeks later, Edwin Zimmerman himself arrived with the local sheriff from the nearest town. The confrontation was tense, with Edwin claiming Quinn had essentially kidnapped his daughter, while the sheriff, uncertain of his jurisdiction in this matter, looked uncomfortable. "Is this true, Miss Zimmerman?" the sheriff asked Cordelia. "It's Mrs. Galloway now," she corrected gently. "And no, I left of my own free will. We're legally married." Edwin's face crumpled at her words, the anger giving way to hurt. "You have ruined everything. The Mullers have withdrawn their business. The store may not survive the winter." For the first time, Cordelia wavered. She looked at her father, older somehow, diminished, and felt the weight of her choices. Quinn stepped forward. "Sir, I understand your anger, but I love your daughter, and I'll spend my life making sure she never regrets choosing me." "Love," Edwin spat the word. "What does love provide when there's no food on the table?" "It provides courage," Quinn answered steadily. "And with courage, we find ways to survive." The sheriff, sensing no crime had been committed, excused himself awkwardly. Edwin stayed one more night, sleeping in their small cabin, watching his daughter move confidently through her new life. In the morning, he left with a warning. "People will talk. They will judge you both harshly for what you've done." Quinn placed his arm around Cordelia's shoulders as they watched her father's wagon disappear down the rough trail. "Let them whisper while we live," he said simply. "Their words can't touch what we're building here." The winter of 1876 was brutal. Snow isolated their cabin for weeks at a time, and their supplies dwindled dangerously low. They learned to hunt together, Cordelia proving surprisingly skilled with a rifle. They read to each other by lamplight, told stories of their childhoods, and planned for spring planting. In those cold, quiet months, their bond deepened beyond the initial passion that had brought them together. Spring brought new challenges and unexpected allies. Their nearest neighbors, the Crawfords, rode over when the trails cleared, bringing seedlings and practical advice. Sarah Crawford took one look at Cordelia, pale from winter confinement but glowing with evident happiness, and declared, "Well, whatever brought you two together was clearly meant to be." Word spread through the scattered homesteads about the young couple who had defied convention for love. Some disapproved, particularly those with ties to Silver Gulch, but others found their story romantic. Gradually, they built connections with the farming and ranching community, exchanging labor and skills during busy seasons. Summer brought their first real test when a grass fire threatened their fledgling crops. Quinn fought the flames alongside neighbors while Cordelia organized a bucket brigade from their well. Together, they saved most of their harvest, though Quinn suffered burns on his hands that left him unable to work for weeks. Cordelia took over all duties, rising before dawn and collapsing exhausted each night, never once complaining. "You could have had an easier life," Quinn observed one evening as she changed his bandages. "I could have had a safer life," she corrected. "Not a better one." Fall brought an unexpected visitor, Quinn's younger brother Patrick, who had tracked him down after returning from 3 years at sea. Patrick's presence was a welcome addition as they prepared for another winter, his strong back and cheerful nature making the work lighter. More importantly, he brought news that the Muller mine was struggling after a cave-in, and Edwin Zimmerman had sold his store to start anew in Denver. "Your father left a letter for you with the new shopkeeper," Patrick told Cordelia. "I collected it when I passed through Silver Gulch." The letter was brief but significant. Edwin acknowledged that he had been wrong to try to force her marriage to Heinrich, who had subsequently revealed a drinking problem and gambling debts. He asked for her forgiveness and included an address in Denver should she wish to write. "Family is family," Quinn said when she showed him the letter. "Perhaps there's hope for reconciliation." That winter was easier than the first. Their cabin was better sealed against the cold, their larder fuller, and Patrick's stories provided entertainment through the long evenings. When spring arrived, Cordelia discovered she was expecting a child, news that filled Quinn with equal parts joy and terror. "I know nothing about being a father," he confessed one night. "And I know nothing about being a mother," she replied. "We'll learn together, like we've done with everything else." They wrote to Edwin with the news, and his response was swift: a trunk delivered by freight wagon containing baby clothes, blankets, and a rocking chair he had crafted himself. The accompanying note was tentative but hopeful. "Perhaps I might visit when the weather improves?" Summer found their small homestead flourishing. They had added a second room to the cabin, planted an orchard that would bear fruit in years to come, and established a small herd of cattle. Neighbors no longer saw them as the scandalous young couple who had defied convention, but as hard-working members of the community who could be counted on in times of need. Edwin arrived in August, his wagon loaded with gifts and supplies. The reunion was tearful but healing, with Cordelia embracing her father while Quinn stood respectfully aside until Edwin extended his hand in peace. "You have built something good here," Edwin acknowledged as Quinn showed him around the property. "Something that will last." "We built it together," Quinn corrected. "I could never have done this alone." In September, as the aspen leaves turned gold against the mountains, Cordelia gave birth to a daughter they named Clara. Quinn paced outside the cabin while Sarah Crawford assisted with the delivery, his fears only subsiding when he heard his child's first strong cry. When he held his daughter for the first time, looking into eyes the same storm gray as his own, he understood finally what they had been building all along: not just a homestead, but a legacy. Edwin stayed through the fall harvest, proving himself an invaluable help as the young parents adjusted to their new reality. He had sold his business in Denver and was considering settling nearby, a prospect that Cordelia welcomed with tears of joy. "There's good land available 3 miles east," Quinn suggested. "Close enough for family, far enough for privacy." Edwin looked at him with newfound respect. "You would welcome me as a neighbor after everything?" "The past is behind us," Quinn said simply. "Clara deserves to know her grandfather." Winter came again, their third on the homestead. The cabin was warm and filled with laughter as Clara grew. Edwin visited regularly, and Patrick courted a young woman from a neighboring farm. On Christmas Eve, as snow fell gently outside, Cordelia found Quinn standing at the window, watching the white landscape in silence. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, joining him with Clara sleeping against her shoulder. "About the first time I rode into Silver Gulch," he answered. "How close I came to just passing through." She leaned her head against his arm. "Do you ever regret staying?" Quinn turned to her, his expression incredulous. "How could I regret the best decision of my life? Even with all the whispers and judgment we faced? All the hardship?" He gently took Clara from her arms, cradling his daughter with a tenderness that still surprised him. "Let them whisper while we live," he repeated his words from years before. Their whispers faded, but what we built remains. Spring of 1879 brought new beginnings. Edwin completed construction on his own cabin nearby, creating a family compound that offered both independence and support. Quinn expanded their cattle operation, while Cordelia started a small schoolhouse for Clara and the neighboring children. Their homestead became a gathering place for community celebrations and Sunday socials. On their third wedding anniversary, Quinn took Cordelia to the highest point on their property, where wildflowers carpeted the hillside and the view stretched all the way to the distant mountains. "I have something to show you," he said, leading her to a newly planted oak sapling. Beside it stood a simple wooden marker with their names and wedding date carved into the surface. "What's this?" she asked, tracing the letters with her finger. "A beginning," he answered. "This tree will grow as our family grows. Someday our grandchildren will sit in its shade and hear the story of how we risked everything for love." Cordelia looked up at him, her eyes shining. "And what will we tell them when they ask if it was worth it?" Quinn pulled her close, his voice certain. "We'll tell them that some things in life are worth any price. That when you find the courage to choose your own path, even when the whole world whispers against you, especially then you discover what you're truly capable of building." As they walked hand in hand back toward their home, where Clara played under Edwin's watchful eye, Cordelia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the moment she first saw Quinn in her father's store, a moment that seemed both yesterday and a lifetime ago, she had recognized something in him that called to her own hidden strength. Together, they had created not just a home but a life of their own design, proving that love, when chosen freely and fought for fiercely, could indeed conquer all. The whispers had long since faded into the wind, but what they had built would endure in the sturdy walls of their home, in the fertile fields they had coaxed from rocky soil, in the community they had helped strengthen, and most of all, in the family they had created against all odds. Their love story, once scandalous, had become legendary in these parts, a testament to the power of two hearts determined to write their own destiny. And as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and crimson, Quinn and Cordelia Galloway stood at the center of the world they had built, surrounded by the quiet evidence of a gamble that had paid off beyond their wildest dreams, proof that sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply to love without reservation and to live without regret.